Great are the works of the Lord, they are pondered by all who delight in them.
The creation God has made is mind-numbing in its complexity. At its most basic, it's a physical, spiritual, and moral universe that we live in. It's a moral universe because within it there are such things as real right and wrong. These derive, as I've said, from the Creator's character. He's imposed them onto his creation, and that's the way things are. We can't change it. One result of this is that human beings, as moral beings, always function in terms of morality. This is true wherever they're found, and no matter who they are or what worldview or philosophical position they hold. It's true even of the most consistent, dyed-in-the-wool, self-conscious atheist who denies morality exists or that there are any constraints on their behaviour. It's also a physical and a spiritual universal creation. We can illustrate this distinction by using two circles. The two circles represent the two basic modes of creation. If you've got a home entertainment centre, there will be various modes in it. By the press of a button, you'll be able to cycle through various sources. For example, press once and it'll be in CD mode. Press again and you may be able to play from a DVD, memory stick or hard drive, through a TV or data projector. Again, and it's into radio mode and modes within that, AM and FM. With the entertainment centre, there's the one machine, yet it has a number of different aspects to it, which do different jobs. The creation is a bit like that. It's one creation, but has two modes of being or existence to it. The physical mode of existence, which we're all very familiar with, at least we think we are, tables and chairs, etc., and the spirit mode of existence. Now, we're actually just as familiar with the spirit mode of existence as we are with the physical mode, but for some reason it's been defined or described in such a way that it appears to be remote, elusive, mysterious, unfamiliar, to the point that many in our world even deny it exists. It could be because it's invisible and intangible. Even though we all live in the spirit mode every moment of our lives and feel its effects on us every day, we can't grasp it, measure it, or bottle it. Yes, it is mysterious, though actually no more mysterious than the physical mode. We kid ourselves if we think that the physical realm is not mysterious. The whole of the creation in all its parts is not only immensely complex, but extremely mysterious, and for all the study humans have given to it, we only have a fingernail hold on understanding it. In many ways, the more we study it, the more mysterious it becomes, and the more it slips away from our grasp. Into the creation he had made, God put some creatures that were personal beings, here represented by the man and the woman on the left side, and angels on the right. Just a comment about my depiction of angels. The Bible records a number of occasions when angels appeared to people in regular daily life. Often when clues can be drawn from such records about what angels look like, it seems they've just appeared as ordinary male human beings, and sometimes have been mistaken as such. Their angelic nature in such cases has been deduced from them conveying knowledge humans couldn't have, or doing things humans can't do. For me to draw them simply as humans, however, would have confused them with humans, so instead I've used a human figure with a dashed outline and made them transparent to indicate they reside in the spirit mode of existence. Many people over time have faced this dilemma of how to depict angels. Traditional solutions have been to put wings on their backs, have them dressed in dazzling white robes, or perhaps place them in the sky or have them suspended above the ground. Angels are also consistently referred to in masculine terms, although the Lord Jesus seems to imply they're genderless when he says in Mark,
"When the dead rise, they will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven."
What is a human being? I asked that question on a web group, and a lady who's no slug replied that she didn't understand the question. Clearly, she hadn't thought about it and simply ran on assumptions. Genesis 1 says,
Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them.
So, what is a human being? A chance product of a mindless universe? No, we've been made and are thus a creature, though a special creature, one made in the image and the likeness of our Creator. To illustrate the latter point, I've put a small triangle in the body of each figure. This represents the fact that we bear the stamp of God, a likeness to God. As far as the Bible is concerned, we're the only creatures that are explicitly said to carry the image of God. The term is not used of angels, even though they share many things in common with us. I put a crown on the head of the figures because we've been given the rule or dominion of the earth. It's not an independent rule like the rule of God because he's totally sovereign. Rather, it's a rule given to us by God, and so is a delegated authority. It includes the responsibility under God to take care of the earth and develop it to the glory of God. We've also been made male and female. This is fairly obvious in the picture, and it's fairly obvious to all of us. The distinction certainly adds a sparkle to life and enables us to know the immense joy and responsibility of bringing into being other lives that also bear the image of God and are also charged with the task of dominion. Within the humanistic worldview, which we'll address later, human beings have no real significance. However, within the biblical worldview, we have great significance. We've been made by our Creator in the image and likeness of our Creator, with important roles and a position of dignity delegated to us by our Creator. We've been made to rule and develop the world under Him and bear and raise for Him godly offspring. Compared to the size of the universe, we're small, but each human being has greater value than all the stars put together. After all, stars are only balls of burning gas. And while our lifespan is short, yet so significant are we that the ethical decisions we make today, no matter how small, will still have significance 10 billion years from now. We're personal beings, thus of a different order than the stars. We're personal, moral creatures made in the image of our Maker with an eternal destiny. What I've said applies to all human beings, male and female. All equally bear the image of God, and all intrinsically have dignity through the position and purposes God has made us for. And thus there's no place for one group, whatever criterion is used to define it, to be viewed as inherently superior or inferior to any other. Specifically, there's no place for racism, as there's only one race, the human race, to which all humans belong. This doesn't exclude the possibility that some cultures may be superior to others, but cultural distinctions aren't part of the basic created order, nor do they have anything to do with biology. Rather, they have to do with the degree cultures conform to the law of God, which He requires His creatures to live by, and conform to the reality of the world as God has made it. In line with the general concepts regarding the creation I've already mentioned, human beings were created limited and dependent. However, being limited and dependent are not flaws and should not be thought of as such. They're simply inherent features of creatures. God has also made non-personal things, and this is represented in the picture by a few of these things: some land and sea, some trees, a horse, a bird, a whale blowing, and a dolphin jumping, etc. God has created distinctly different things. The creation has a diversity that is real and utterly staggering in extent. Now let's look at the creation in terms of the two-mode picture. Human beings appear to be a union of both the physical and the spirit modes of existence. So as I sit here today, and as you watch this wherever you are, we're physical, spiritual beings. We have a spirit aspect to our most fundamental being, which rides on the material of our body, or vice versa, and so we're composites. And we're this composite 100% of the time. No other part of the creation apparently is like this in the way we are, and so I've indicated us residing in the overlap between the two modes. Angels are said to be spirits in Hebrews chapter 1. That is, they have their existence in the spirit mode, so I've drawn them in that mode. As the spirit mode is invisible to us, we don't normally see angels, though as I've mentioned, the Bible records occasions when people have seen and conversed with them. In some of these cases, they appeared to all intents and purposes like real flesh and blood humans. The Lord and two angels visited Abraham and had a meal with him. That was Genesis 18. They weren't transparent. At the beginning, the three were referred to as men. In the next chapter, the two who come to Sodom are described both as men and angels. The one which stayed with Abraham is referred to eventually as the Lord. The angel Gabriel appeared to Mary and told her of her impending pregnancy with Jesus, though no indication of the angel's appearance is given in this case. A hint that Gabriel appeared as a normal man is perhaps indicated by the fact that rather than his appearance, it was the content of what he said that bothered Mary, which she hurried to check by visiting Elizabeth. Matthew says an angel came and rolled back the stone at the entrance to the Lord's tomb and sat on it. Matthew describes him as looking like lightning and dressed in clothes as white as snow. Mark says a young man dressed in white was at the tomb and spoke to some of the women, and thus they became the first to know of the resurrection. Luke's record of the same event says there were 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning who spoke to the women. John doesn't say anything about either himself or Peter seeing angels when they went to the tomb, yet Mary, who was there alone shortly after them, saw 2 angels in white in the tomb and conversed with them. On another occasion, Peter, while in prison, Acts 12, was woken by an angel thumping him on his side, shining a torch in his eyes and ordering him to follow. His chains fell off, the prison doors opened by themselves, and once outside they walked the length of one street together, and then the angel disappeared. Where did he go? Apparently he stepped across an event horizon separating 2 worlds, and so returned to his world after carrying out a task in ours. What did his body consist of when he was in our world? It did physical things. Peter got whacked on the side. Was it physical like our bodies? If so, where did its atoms and molecules go when he crossed the threshold between the worlds? If not, what was it made of? And what did it look like when he entered his world? Apparently his clothes went with him. At least we don't read of them being left behind in a pile on the road. There are mysteries here we can only speculate about, but somehow our spirit rides on our body and is tied to it in such a way that it's affected by it. For example, our spirit sags if our body is tired or sick or on drugs or whatever. And then there are those who have had serious malfunctions in their brains through injury, disease or aging, whose character and personality has changed dramatically. An analogy that may help in thinking about the relationship between the spirit and the body is the relationship of information to a medium on which it's carried. For example, the paper and ink of a book, or the magnetic blips on the plastic of a CD or DVD. Where's the information? You can cut up the page of a book but not find it. It's not in the wood fibres and the ink that make up the page. It's actually invisible and weightless. A blank CD weighs the same as one stuffed full of information, and it occupies no space. Thus I take information to be spirit stuff, which rides on the material medium, whatever it is. Exactly the same applies to the information that codes for the physical structure and function of living things, which rides on the material mediums of DNA and other molecules and cells. If information is in fact spirit stuff, there must be various non-personal structural aspects to the spirit mode as well as what we perhaps more commonly think of as spirit. That is, personal beings such as ourselves, angels and God. God being uncreated spirit and we and angels being created spirit. Paul says in 1 Corinthians regarding the resurrection of the body,
"It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. There is a natural body, and there is also a spiritual body."
Bodies are not personal, so this indicates the non-personal structural aspect I posit. It seems to me that from a biblical perspective, that as a general rule, our spirit is the sum total of the personal aspects of our being, the invisible, intangible part of us, but excluding any non-personal structural aspects such as genetic information. This means that all thought, emotion, communication, moral judgment, etc. are functions of our spirit because all of these are invisible, intangible, non-material. When we know a person, clearly we know them as total beings, but what we think of as their personality, etc., as we know them, is in fact their spirit. Interaction with spirits then is an everyday affair. It's simply what happens when people meet, either in person or via any medium of communication. Understanding the composite nature of our being highlights for us how catastrophic death really is. Death is a tearing apart of the 2 modes of our being, and so the body and the spirit are separated. The materialist alternative to all this is that there's no such thing as spirit, only matter, and thus there are no non-material aspects to human beings at all. Thought, emotion, communication, moral judgment, etc. have been called epiphenomena of matter, They're said to have a material cause, a side effects of matter doing its thing. Thus, death is not a separation of a spirit which continues to exist and function from the bodily substrate on which it rode, but the end of the person. End of story. On the physical side, things are equally complex. What actually is the nature of the physical matter that appears to us to be so tangible and solid? If we follow a reductionist path down into the inner recesses of matter, we get to protons, neutrons and electrons and something like 250 other subatomic particles with immense energy forces binding them all together. What are these things? What is the energy that binds them so tightly? And what is the space between them? In the illustration, what I've called physical is everything that's not spirit, yet into this side I've put some things that have life and appear to have character, temperaments, even personality, and certainly contain information. If you've had anything to do with animals, you'll be aware of their individual characters. Some cats by nature will love you to bits, while others will claw you all the way to the door. However, it's not indicated in the Bible that they have a spirit aspect to their existence, at least not in the personal moral way we do. To be frank, I'm not sure what these manifestations of animal character are derived from. I'm sure they're not of purely physical origin, thus should perhaps be located in the overlap somewhere, even though I've put them in the physical side of the drawing. These two categories then, the physical and the spirit, are broad general categories, and while there may be more overlap than I've indicated, in fact more than a drawing can show without losing simplicity, I think this general description can be helpful. At least I hope so. The personal beings in the creation have relationships. I've indicated these relationships by arrows. As personal creatures, we have a relationship going right outside the creation to the Creator. Because angels are personal creatures, they do as well. This can be called a vertical relationship. It's the relationship of an inferior, us, to a superior God. Then there are horizontal relationships between human beings. There is the general relationship on the outside of the figures to all other human beings. These are horizontal. They are relationships between equals. And there's the specific man-woman relationship of husband and wife, illustrated by the arrows between the figures, the only relationship where a sexual relationship is authorized and legitimized by God. A relationship that allows human beings to join with God in producing and ideally training offspring who will love and serve the Lord. The arrow within the body indicates the relationship we have with ourselves, which is expressed in how we feel about ourselves, etc. Then we have a relationship downward to the rest of the creation. This is a relationship of a superior, us, to an inferior, the rest of the creation. It's the relationship of a steward to that over which he has stewardship, where care, nurture, and development to the glory of God should occur. As a proverb says,
"A righteous man cares for the needs of his animal."
This picture represents the creation at the end of creation week. God had pronounced everything in his world very good. There were no blemishes. There were no flaws. There were no broken relationships. Nothing was unraveled at all. It was a state of perfection, or as described by God himself, it was very good. There are two important things to note here, which I'll expand in the next session. Firstly, God made a physical and spiritual universe, and he pronounced the whole lot very good. The spiritual is not somehow more pure or more holy than the physical, such that, for example, to be really in touch with God, we have to suppress the physical. The physical is pronounced very good, just as much as the spiritual is. And as we will see, except for one area, the spiritual is just as fallen or corrupted by the rebellion which follows as anything else. In fact, man's rebellion occurs in the spirit mode, as that's where the moral attributes of humans lie, where rebellious moral choices are made. Contrary to a false dualism as found in Greek thought, Gnosticism, Eastern mysticism, which pits the physical realm against the spirit realm, with the spirit being deemed superior, higher, holier, and the physical being denigrated, suppressed, or even denied, true spirituality does not, cannot deny or denigrate the body or the physical realm, because to do so would deny God's own original evaluation of his creation. Interestingly, we find this false dualism in the Bible coming from the mouth of a demon as part of the very first attack on Job in his suffering. Eliphaz relates,
"A word was secretly brought to me. My ears caught a whisper of it. Amid disquieting dreams in the night, when deep sleep falls on men, fear and trembling seized me and made all my bones shake. A spirit glided past my face, and the hair on my body stood on end. It stopped, but I could not tell what it was. A form stood before my eyes, and I heard a hushed voice. Can a mortal be more righteous than God? Can a man be more pure than his Maker? If God places no trust in his servants, if he charges his angels with error, how much more those who live in houses of clay, whose foundations are in the dust, who are crushed more readily than a moth? Between dawn and dusk they are broken to pieces. Unnoticed they perish forever. Are not the cords of their tent pulled up, so that they die without wisdom?"
what angels does God charge with error? Only the ones who have rebelled, as this one clearly has, who are now demons. But angels are spirits, and the demon says if God charges spirits with error, how much more those who live in houses of clay, physical bodies which die so easily and disappear. And so the false idea of the superiority of spirit and the inferiority of matter is asserted here. The second thing to note is that while the universe was perfect when the creation was completed on day 6, this does not mean that any change in it was inherently a move away from perfection. The perfection of the creation allowed for the development that perfect human beings would bring about as they express their creativity in a host of ways. For example, in farming and developing technology and culture in a perfect world. In other words, as they exercise dominion and stewardship as commanded by God in their original job description in Eden prior to the fall.
Maximum dynamic pressure on the vehicle in the lower atmosphere. Already 7 miles away from the Kennedy Space Center at an altitude of 5 miles.